Hi, this is Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. Last week, I sent a letter to Governor Bryant and WAPA CEO Carl Knight to urge action on St. John's current power crisis. Here's what I said and why it's important. This past week's 40-plus hour outage was not a fluke or a one-time event. It was the most severe episode yet of chronic vulnerability in St. John's electrical infrastructure, with real consequences for real people, spoiled food and medication, disruption of medical equipment, serious harm to businesses, further hardship for our most vulnerable community members. St. John has waited too long and endured too much. This level of service is not acceptable. My office's understanding is that WAPA restored power through a line that had previously been decommissioned, taken out of service because of its age and diminished reliability. As an aside, that speaks volumes about the talent, intellect, and ingenuity of our WAPA men and women. Our people always make a way out of the least. Healthcare workers, teachers, all over our islands, but it shouldn't be that way. If it is accurate that the services were connected through a line that had previously been decommissioned, then St. John's power supply remains at risk. Restoration is not resolution. I also called for a thorough investigation into whether this outage involved deliberate tampering with our public electrical infrastructure. Anyone found responsible should face appropriate consequences. As my office or I prepared this message, a generation failure or unit fire at the Randolph-Harley power plant caused a district-wide blackout, followed by forced rotational outages across St. Thomas. And once again, St. John, where residents just endured more than 40 hours without power, went through it again. This is unacceptable. My recommendations to the government of the Virgin Islands included the following. First, I encouraged the declaration of a local state of emergency for St. John's electrical infrastructure. Governor Bryant has previously declared a state of energy emergency for the entire territory. The circumstances require nothing less at this time. Second, I urge the governor to formally request a major disaster declaration from the President of the United States under the Stafford Act. That kind of declaration is not just symbolic. It can unlock real, concrete resources. FEMA public assistance for emergency generation, grants for repair or replacement of the submarine transmission infrastructure St. John depends on, hazard mitigation funds, and potential DSNAP food benefits for households that suffered food loss during this outage. We actually have precedent for this. In 2025, Puerto Rico faced similar grid instability and received a federal energy emergency declaration. Emergency generation, expedited funds, and direct technical assistance from the Department of Energy. The Virgin Islands deserves the same level of engagement. We should pursue every available federal funding avenue. DOE technical assistance, the Department of Interior's Energizing Insular Communities program, USDA rural development. A permanent solution is essential. One aging, previously decommissioned cable, no redundancy, no dedicated emergency generation on island. That's not enough for St. John. Billions of federal dollars have flowed to this territory for disaster recovery and infrastructure rebuild. St. John cannot be left behind in that investment. The people of St. John have shown remarkable resilience, but they should never have to absorb the cost of infrastructure failure. They deserve reliable power, and I remain ready to work with Governor Bryant and WAPA to make that a reality.